Hello, everyone. I'm Sandra Simon, Managing Editor for the Dharma and Spiritual Practice segment at Light on Light Press. And I want to warmly welcome and thank everyone for joining us today for this special book launch. Light on Light Press produces enhanced content books spotlighting the sacred ground upon which all religious and wisdom traditions intersect. It aims to stimulate and perpetuate engaged interspiritual and perennial wisdom dialogue for the purpose of assisting the dawning of a unitive consciousness that will inspire compassionate action toward a just and peaceful world. We are delighted to publish Dr. Kenneth R. Lakritz's Remembering Self, Seasons of the Soul Rediscovered Through Mystical Experience and Depth Psychology, because it spotlights the deeper levels of the common journey connecting us all as members of the human family as we make our way through the seasons of life. This book offers valuable insights into a universal process of growth, transformation, and renewal by bringing to light many lesser-known developmental challenges at each stage of life that are meant to assist our progress in this world while preparing us for what lies beyond. The interdisciplinary and integrative approach Dr. Kenneth Lakritz applies to this exploration of the essence and meaning of life's journey offers engaging and accessible guidance to all, especially those in the helping professions. We consider this to be a groundbreaking book in providing new depth to understanding the purpose, direction, and destination of the life course. This book is also unique in that it offers significant wisdom for navigating life's twists and turns with intentionality. It provides many inviting, heart-opening meditations to assist and guide a developing consciousness. We welcome Remembering Self in taking its place among our other books that tell our timeless, universal story in which wholeness is at the very center and periphery of all things. Especially in the context of Light on Light's commitment to books furthering the inner spiritual paradigm and the now famous words of Brother Wayne Teasdale, the definitive revolution is the spiritual awakening of humankind. This volume is particularly timely and urgent. A unique exploration of the human psyche and the journey towards psycho-spiritual unity, Remembering Self covers the mind-body-spirit realm, as well as personal development, psychology, spirituality, midlife, eldering, and death, uniquely weaving together the mystery of mystical spirituality, the depth of Jungian psychoanalysis, and the complexity of attachment theory. Broken into sections that follow the 4 seasons of life through which the soul evolves. This book details the tasks, responsibilities, and development necessary to integrate and move through each stage. Each stage represents both a universal, transcendent perspective and an immanent personal reflection through the voice of Shema, a character recounting his life as he nears death under the guidance of Cornelius, a wise figure representing the essence of self. Although Shema is a fictional character, his story is an amalgam of Dr. Lakritz's clinical patients over decades of practice. Dr. Lakritz is a licensed clinical psychologist with 4 decades of experience. His career has taken a winding path from clinical neuropsychology through his current dedication to long-term depth psychotherapy with an alchemical Jungian orientation. He has devoted his clinical and academic life to adult developmental challenges, both with mid and late life populations, and has spent many years writing on the subjects of eldering, intergenerational dialogue, and late life development. For decades, Dr. Lakritz also has been a proponent, practitioner, and experiencer of psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, with its capacity to help us access and work with the deepest and most difficult dimensions of the psyche. He is an author of books and articles about adult development, conscious aging, and elder wisdom, including the parabola book, Elders on Love, Dialogues on the Consciousness, Cultivation, and Expression of Love. Dr. Lakritz received a Doctor of Philosophy in Clinical Psychology from the California School of Professional Psychology, Berkeley, California, in 1985. Hi, Ken. Happy birthday for your book
Hi,
and
Sandra.
yourself into the
Thank you
human
very
matrix.
much. Thank you very much.
On this auspicious day, I'd like to ask, why were you called to write Remembering Self? And what do you hope that people will take away from today's book launch?
So first of all, I want to say, Sandra, I'm absolutely delighted to be here. This is a very important day for me and for the book itself and for the work. I was called to write this book about 35 years ago. So I've been at this for a very long time. The calling was an invitation. It was an invitation into many layers and chapters of my own life. And in the process of writing this book, I realized that there was a pre-existent universal structure that we walk as we engage the seasons of our lives. I'd like the reader to understand that we approach and choose these lives with great purpose and great intent, and that each human life is a profound catalyst for the evolution of the soul. That said, the book is generally about remembering the essence of who we are, the foundation of who we are. It's about the soul's awakening and rediscovery of itself as we walk through the seasons. We start our lives with a great forgetting. And the great forgetting begins in the spring season, in which we are immersed in the matrix of human life, of birthing, of joining with the body, of building a young life, of then building our first adult life, and building a human identity that can carry the weight of this first adult life. As we approach midlife and we approach the fall season, we find ourselves at a very profound transitional nexus in which there is an opportunity to transform from one state of being to another state of being. During this time, there is what I call the great remembering or the great awakening. This is an emergent process as we awaken to the realization of who we are as souls, who we are foundationally. And what we might find at this time is that we may experience a death of our provisional identity, our first adult identity, and we may experience a reawakening and a realignment with the depth of who we are at our deepest center. During this time, we also experience a recentering of our identity, and we find that we have the potential to participate in creation and participate in our lives on a much more deeply conscious level. As we approach the winter season of our lives, we find the body declining, and we also find a deeper relationship with the self, with soul. It's at this time that there's a natural coalescence of wisdom. And as this happens, we may find ourselves called to a position of eldering. And this is a time of giving back, of looking to the previous generations, of initiating, of awakening, of guiding and midwifing the following generations so that they may come to really make contact and recenter in who they are as well. So I want us to imagine for a second that we are sparks of light originating from a boundless unitary field of consciousness, and we choose to enter creation. And I want to underscore the fact that these lives are a choice. They're not thrust upon us. We choose to enter creation, time and space, to enter into the layers of creation, formation, manifestation as we deeply engage the incarnation process of the human matrix. So what I want to do now is I want to invite us all on a journey through the seasons and through the labyrinth, the great labyrinth of life. And I want to hand this off to the master drummer, Xavier Eikerenkoetter.
Oh, yes. Let's do that. Let's take that journey with these beautiful souls that we have on your book launch today. And yes, let's get that vibratory spark alive here. So I would love to introduce Xavier Eikerenkoetter. He's going to be our vibratory spark today that's going to bring forth each season by sound and manifest the sacred space that holds our experience today. Xavier has guided individuals and communities through transformative ritual, spiritual transformation, and psychological insight. From the age of 11, he answered the call of the drum. Soulful fascination developed into a lifelong devotion to rhythm. As a drummer at his core, he has explored ancient rhythmic traditions. Over time, he widened his musical voice to include singing, composing, and recording, from which several audiovisual albums and compilations emerged, each project reflecting his dialogue between spirit and sound. Xavier holds degrees in philosophy from Columbia University and counseling psychology from Pacifica Graduate Institute. For over 4 decades, he served as a metaphysical minister, meditative guide, and inspirational speaker. Bringing together psychology, spirituality, and rhythm, he designed and implemented drum therapy programs for boys in Los Angeles group homes and probation centers. These groups culminated in drum council rites of passage courses and ceremonies that gave the boys a new narrative for their lives. Committed to the artistic and spiritual well-being of youth and communities, Xavier co-founded Rhythm Arts Alliance in Los Angeles and the United Palace of Cultural Arts in New York City with his wife, Annette. Xavier returns to Africa regularly to deepen his connection with its people, cultures, and the wild majesty of its animals and landscapes. At home in Napa Valley, California, he loves time with his wife, Annette, cycling, and his solitude. Xavier, please welcome and tell everyone what you'll be offering today for the book launch, and then lead us into the spring of the soul.
Wow. Well, thank you, Sandra. It's so good to be here with you and Ken, my dear friend. So wonderful to be with you and on this wonderful occasion and to hear your words. And I so appreciate being a part of this journey through the seasons of the soul. So I'm honored today to be able to offer, I'll say, a wrapping of this beautiful event in a sonic, magical sound envelope, an envelope of ancestral sound. With the ancestral drum, which we all resonate to, and we go as far back into all of our ancestry, both earthly and stellar, we all have the beating of the cosmic drum at the center of our being, and it's represented by the beating heart. So my experience when I play these ancestral rhythms, the tradition that I learned was West African. And when I play these rhythms that have been played for hundreds of years, some of them thousands of years, there's the experience I have of conjuring an archetype. So as we play a rhythm for each one of the seasons, understand we are actually together conjuring an archetype. And we have the opportunity to couple with that a positive intention that we can send out into the world, beginning with ourselves, moving toward our own wholeness, and then for our loved ones, for our society, and for our world. So yes, that's what I'm here to do today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Xavier.
Oh, hey, so beginning with spring. So when I think of spring, I think of the initiation of youth, the wonderful blush of those who are growing into what they are becoming, the season of the soul that moves from birth into the first kind of implications of what we're becoming. And the elders and mentors in the ancestral villages and in the old tribes, they watch and see how the youth is moving and to see how they're beginning to blossom. So there's a rhythm called Ngoron, which is played for female initiations, for the young girls. And I'd like to start with that today. And to make this more personal and so that we can all participate in this, as I drum this today, I think of someone in my life who, as a young girl, at a time when she should have been initiated by the people of her village, so to speak, by a community, something tragic happened to her and she did not get that initiation. And I am seeing the impact of that moving through the seasons of her life in a debilitating way. So as I play and sing this, I'm going to be sending her that energy. So you might want to think of someone you want to send an initiatory blessing to. Maybe a young woman in your life. It may be the feminine, the inner feminine within you that needs an initiation. But let's initiate this powerful, regenerative, spring-like energy, which is the season we happen to be in right now. And this song speaks of a bird, Tubane, that sings coo, coo, coo. And perhaps this song originally speaks to the spirit that is meant to grow freely within these beautiful young women as they're supported by the community to fly, to take flight into who they are truly meant to be in life. Tubane ku ku ku, tubane kwanyanjanto sinendo, 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 tubane ku. Pane quagliando senendo, pane cu, pane quagliando senendo, pane cu, pane quagliando senendo. Tubane ku ku ku, tubane quagliando senendo, tubane ku ku ku, tubane quagliando senendo, tubane ku ku ku, tubane quagliando senendo, tubane ku ku ku, tubane quagliando senendo.
As that sacred rhythm and sound settles into our beings, I'd like to ask you, Xavier, what do you remember about your birthing into life and the first platform of bonding into family? And how did your early life shape your path and sensibilities as you perhaps entered the second half of life?
I love your provocative, evocative question. So I get images and remembrances of my entry into physicality. And the first thing that comes up is not very pleasant. Well, it is pleasant in that I remember floating in a wonderful kind of deep, dark, wet, warm place. Somewhat contented, mother's anxieties floating through here and there, you know, sending ripples through me. And then at a certain point, there was a breach. It wasn't a breach birth, but there was this sense of breach happening. And then there was an incursion. And I was pulled out of this space by some metal tongs. What do they call it? The forceps. And brought out into this, I don't know, bright, garish, noisy reality that I wasn't ready to come out into. And it set up an interesting dynamic for me where I have to be careful that I don't let myself be pulled into things that are not good for me, just to blatantly state it. And what it has done is created a strength of discernment within me, because whenever I feel pulled for something, towards something, I have to know for myself, okay, is this good? Is this right? Is this true? In itself, or even where is the pull coming from within me? Is it coming from guilt? Is it coming from a sense of duty and obligation? And that gives me kind of a basis to determine whether I'm going to let myself move into something. So if the vibrational energy feels good, if it feels right, if it feels true, then I will allow myself to be attracted into it. And at the same time, honor whatever resistance is there and process the resistance. So that's an interesting birth dynamic for me that's kind of played out into my life to this day. In terms of my family, what I remember in that milieu so clearly and powerfully is music and spirituality, an immersion in spirituality and music. Both sides of my family, you know, is a ministerial tradition. You know, my grandparents, my parents, all ministers. And there was always this focus on spirituality, you know, the relationship with God, spirit, you know, higher being, whatever you want to call that ultimate source and force of all that is. And that's something certainly that carries through to me now, because I would say ultimately all the work I do, that's what it amounts to, relationship to something higher. And along with that, you know, that kind of black gospel music tradition, you know, that comes, that's an expression of the Negro spiritual. Some of that comes out of the Negro spiritual tradition that expresses, in one sense, the pain of being in bondage, but at the same time, the sense of liberation and joy of moving through and moving out of that, those shackles and bonds. And so, but that musical tradition, and, you know, in church, at home, you know, family around the piano singing, you know, my grandparents, my aunts, they all sang, my mom played piano and sang. It was just such a wonderful balm to me, and it really was my personal milieu. And so here I am, involved in, drawn into something here that is clearly good, right, and true, this launching of this wonderful book by my friend Ken, and bringing something musical to this beautiful spiritual event. And so for me, this is right on point, and I'm so glad to be here.
Xavier, as you engage the remembrance of your birthing, what do you notice about its impact on further transitions as you've transitioned into your teenage years, into your adult years, and through midlife? Do you see that dynamic following through as it had from this initial experience?
Yeah, I certainly do. There's this sense that I developed of that I have to listen to my inner voice, and I have to respect what's going on inside me. Some of the difficulty I experienced in birth, you know, I have since come to understand what many of the deep messages were. And so back to the musical piece of it, when I became, at 11 years old, I got this calling to play drums. I really wanted to play drums. And I know that was that was the voice of my soul speaking. So I listened to it. Whenever my soul emerges, I do my best to listen to that. And that's something like at each stage of my life, I find myself falling back into soul, so to speak. Always maintaining communication at the soul level, but at certain times I fall back into it. Sometimes it's out of a difficult crisis. I end up falling and I fall back into my soul. Sometimes it's, I don't know, through some amazing joy or sense of accomplishment with something, and I fall back into my soul. But it's like at each stage of my life, it's the voice of soul. And
you know, oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say that it sounds like the soul is there as a resource for you through the push and the pull of these transitions, and it's something you've found you've been able to rely on.
That's very true. So I go back to drumming again. Drumming specifically took me through my adolescence. and the music, the connection to, you know, something that's beyond cognition, that's beyond, you know, words and vocabulary. It's like it's always there. It's flowing in my substratum like a river. And when I remember to come back and dip into that, it just is tremendously revitalizing. And in times when I forget that relationship, you know, that's when I get lost.
So it's the remembering that serves as a catalyst to find yourself through the most difficult periods of your life, is what I'm hearing.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Xavier.
Absolutely, Ken. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing that. And that will lead us into summer. Would you do us the honor, Xavier, of bringing us into the next season before I introduce our next guest?
Certainly. Just turn my mic down and speak a little louder so that you can still hear me. So for summer, there is a rhythm called yankadi. I'm going to play this on the djembe. These drums, you can't see these beautiful. They are called dununs. They are the bass drums in a traditional West African ensemble. And then this is the djembe, the hand drum. But there's a rhythm called yankadi, which is played in situations where people begin to couple. When I think of summer, I think of, you know, the hot, steamy season where you have that passion activating within that season of life that leads you to look for that focus in a relationship, which often ends up in marriage. Sometimes it does, but yankadi is played within specific ritual contexts where people are actually looking for mates, and it's a rhythm of attraction. So it goes like this. Salaya ye salaya bamobe bamobe Borina koroma ya la kalemane salaya awa salaya ye salaya bamobe bamobe Borina koroma ya la kalemane salaya awa Salaya ye salaya bamobe bamobe Orina korogumaya la kalemane salaya awa Salaya ye salaya bamobe bamobe Orina korogumaya la kalemane salaya awa Salaya awa, salaya awa, salaya awa.
What an absolute joyful introduction for our next guest. I'd like to introduce Dr. Diana Paque, coming on for summer. Dr. Paque trained in hypnotherapy, regression, and energy therapies at the HCH Institute in Lafayette, California. She holds certifications as a certified clinical hypnotherapist, Reiki master, certified regressionist, certified life between lives regressionist, and energy therapist. She is a member of the Newton Institute, which certifies life between lives regressionists in tradition of its founder, Dr. Michael Newton. Dr. Paque also has completed training as a quantum consciousness facilitator with the Institute for Quantum Consciousness. She is an IFS-informed internal family systems practitioner And she is a Usui lineage Reiki master teacher and a Kali Ki Reiki master. As of March 2019, Dr. Paque was named the executive director of the Newton Institute for Life Between Lives Hypnotherapy. She assumed this role in addition to her practice with clients to provide quality and ethical regression services. Dr. Paque works primarily with individuals in therapeutic settings to achieve their goals. As she is also a Reiki master, she also provides for individuals wishing to learn more about practicing and using Reiki in their lives and work. And she also provides training to the level of Reiki master to others who want to teach and train other practitioners. She continues to do advanced training and hold certifications in weight management, virtual banding procedures, past life regression, and other advanced energy techniques. She continues to study to improve the services she is able to offer to her clients, to improve and refine her skills, and to increase her awareness of options for living, both for herself and others. Hi, Diana. It's so great to see you today.
Hi, Sandra. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'd like to ask you, what do you remember about your transition into the first adulthood and separation from your family ground? And looking back, how was this phase formative in your personal development and foundational to who you are in your work today?
This is such a big question. To look at how have you changed? Where did you come from? How did you emerge? What are you doing in your life and how did you become you? And as you go back to the beginning, as Xavier was talking about, we come through a conditioning process where we are the person that emerges into our family unit and we recognize ourselves as part of that. And there's a point at which maybe it's puberty or maybe it's some place where you people who aren't like your family, that you begin to recognize that there's a world out there that doesn't match, and that we begin to move into different spaces. I think in the last few years, I've become much more aware about how that early part of our development is conditioning us into this life we've chosen to come and live, into the work that we're here to do. And this initial conditioning sets us up for being or guided, depending upon how critical and how hard it is, into where we're here. And as I look at my life and my teenage years and look beyond, I was the second child. So my parents did a lot for my sister. And by the time they got to me, it was like, oh, we don't have to do any of that or do it herself. And I find that that's a pattern that my parents and I were really different from each other, and that I chose parents who were very different than me. My mother always saw me as a projection of her, and therefore I was a disappointment because I wasn't the perfect projection that she wanted me to be. And so as I started to make choices, I was different. I made different choices than she would. And as I chose where to go to school and seeing how I chose to move forward in going to college and what I chose, it was different than what she would choose. And therefore she was uncomfortable. So when I chose to go to graduate school in Southern California, that was a real shock to me because she was very much against me going to Northern California. And I couldn't understand why that was such a big deal. I mean, it was me just choosing where I wanted to go to school. And for her, it was me choosing to move away from what was familiar. And that was her fear. And it took me a long time to realize that what I was encountering was my parents' fear and the fears and the conditioning that they had, that as I was choosing my life, I was going up against their fears and flying through it and being me. And that emergence from that cocoon of whatever that was into another environment was the emergence. So it was dissonant to my parents for me to become me. They didn't get why I was me. They didn't get why I was making choices. And some of this was me choosing to step out of the conditioning because my parents were both alcoholic. They both smoked. We had issues with food and eating disorders. And so all of that existed in the family as normal. And when I stepped out of that conditioning, I stepped into facing those issues in my life and making choices that were very uncomfortable, either for my mother or my father. And my father died at 56 of alcoholism. My mother died at 89 of alcoholism. And so the switch into me making choices to move beyond those addictions and to deal with my life were things that were obviously really scary for them in practice, but they were part of what I was here to do. And so I see me moving into my own environment as me then finding me and finding what was important for me and how those conditions no longer were enough for me to be me, and that they masked the power and the energy of me in a way that kept me hidden and not fully being me. That was very upsetting because the family was reliant on all of us, drinking the Kool-Aid, literally. So I see us, the family kind of breaking as each of us moved out, and me being the first one to really break away and then say, no, I'm not doing this. No, I'm not continuing to go along with alcohol. I got sober when I was 35. So that was a big challenge for my parents. So I see those shifts away from the conditioning as being really fundamental to me stepping into my contract here, my choice of being me, and my stepping into the power and energy of what I am here to be. And that I chose to come in. Now I can look back and see this, but I chose to step into this family because it set me up to have to do that if I was going to thrive.
And how,
That was actually going to be my question, Diana, is if we believe that we choose these lives, how did that choice impact your soul's evolution, more specifically?
Well, if I look back to choosing to be born and choosing to come into this lifetime and these parents, I chose to come through this route because it almost feels like my soul knew that this was a life where all of this had to happen. And it almost feels like in other lives, I kind of backed away forward, wiggled out. This was a life where I set it up, so I was going to go through it. And certainly the parents that I had, it was very black and white about either I'm going to go with this or I'm not. I'm going to step into being me, or I'm going to stay as a fictional person within that environment.
And you gave yourself an incredibly difficult task.
Mhm.
Why would your soul choose such a difficult task?
Because it was part of the learning I had to do. I mean, my soul is here not only to learn this, but to help others learn. So part of my learning is to bring that to the world. If I'm here to be light energy in the world and to serve others, my having direct experience then allows me to share my pain, my process with others to give others hope, and so that I can bring that to others. The early part of my life, I did very traditional things. I worked in education. I worked for a university. I did all of these very traditional things. And as I stepped away from that and was pushed into other things, I was finding that I was doing work of my soul. So I found
So
therapy.
So you assured yourself that you would be, that the weight of the tasks of your conditioning in your early life would awaken you to your late life task.
Right. I think it took me
Mhm.
until late life to get to a point that I had sufficient awareness and awakening and remembering of all of these pieces that had brought me here, so that it began to make sense. It really didn't make sense until later in life, because the pieces had to come together and I had to have sufficient distance to be able to see what the picture looked like. It's like when you're putting together a jigsaw puzzle, you have to have enough puzzle pieces before the puzzle is not just sky or, random pieces.
You're able to honor the early teaching, even though it was very, some would describe it as highly dysfunctional. There's all kinds of pathological terms we may place on it, but you're looking back and you're honoring it as what your soul needed as a catalyst to awaken.
And in addition to that,
Mhm.
what that helps with is the healing around anger or resentment or feelings about my parents, because their souls chose to be in this role with me. So if I had a mother that I was in resistance to and she was in resistance to me, that was the role that we both chose, and her loving soul chose to do that for me, for my soul, as well as for her soul. So that I can look at that and release any anger, any resentment around that, because she came in contract with me to do exactly what she did.
And so you can see it now as a blessing.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
But you have to have distance in order to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Thank you, Diana.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Diana, for sharing. And with that, that'll transition us into fall.
So as we come through the summer of life, that brings a certain amount of individuation and cleaving from the parents and their way of being and the way that they have laid the world out for us and the way we're supposed to be, as Diana has so aptly expressed. We grow into the fall, and when I think of fall, I think of a harvest, and it feels like a time of life where we begin to actually reap the bounty of our individuation, of becoming fully ourselves. And there is a rhythm in the Malinke region, from the Malinke people of West Africa, called Kasa. Actually, it's a whole class of rhythms that is played for the farmers, the workers who are out in the field. So if you can just imagine you're out in the field with your hoe, with whatever implement, and you're pulling in the harvest and the bounty, and you begin to hear some singing in the distance, and the women clapping, and the drummers begin to drum, and bit by bit that sound makes its way to you in celebration of you. When some of the words say, "Arise, noble farmer, you bring us bounty and we bring you the gifts," they bring food and they bring refreshment and nourishment to these farmers who are in the field. Ila wili wo konko daba, kondo chilu barana. 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 Ponko daba, kondo chilo barana. Ila wili wo ponko daba, kondo chilo barana. ila willy walk conco da ba. Condon tilo barana, ila willy walk conco da ba. Condon tilo barana, ila willy walk conco da ba. Condon tilo barana, ila willy walk conco da ba. Condon tilo barana. I have to offer my apologies to the ancestors for not getting that rhythm out correctly. But the spirit of it is there. Kasa.
The spirit is always there. And I really want to say back to what you were talking about at the beginning, Xavier, like when you were discerning that rhythm of the soul, like you likened it akin to a heartbeat, giving you that guiding day. And every time the rhythm showed up for you and showed you that path to your soul, like I'm really, in what you've been playing, I'm really feeling that connection into that experience. I just want to thank you for that also. I'm also a fall baby, so I really like the fall season. And with that, I would love to warmly welcome our next guest to talk about what she calls the wisening process as we start to reap some of these things in the fall season of our life. Rajashree Maa, Dr. Joni Dittrich. Rajashree Maa, and that means Queen Mother, and she of the lineage of Divine Mother. Rajashree Maa is the founder and midwife of Paque Reiki. She is a master of 4 Reiki lineages and a venerated inner spiritual teacher of meditation, yogic wisdom, and holistic wellness. She understands healing as a practice of opening to the universal love that is limitless and without conditions, and as a means to realizing the divine within us. From her first reading about the healings of Jesus in the Bible, she knew that true healing must come from the inside out. Graduating from the University of Michigan with a degree in World Religious Studies, she then studied theology at Vanderbilt University and earned a master's degree in Human Development Counseling. Rajashree Maa went on to receive her PhD in psychology from the University of Memphis and practiced as a clinical psychologist for over 30 years in Napa, California, before devoting her life entirely to the wisdom school Kula, her yogic studies, and her spiritual sadhana. Her book, May the Love Force Be With You, Paque Reiki, Healing with Divine Mother and Yoga Wisdom, is available in all formats through Amazon, also published by Light on Light Press. Hi, Rajashree Maa.
Oh, blessings, Chamatkara. And of course, what no one has heard yet is that Chamatkara is not only one of our wisdom school Paque Reiki master teachers, she is also on our wisdom school karma, our wisdom school council. And she is most likely the next in line to take on this lineage when my winter comes to its conclusion. So it's with great love that I appreciate your introduction, Chamatkara. And I know her as Chamatkara because she is that blessed, surprising grace that shows up in a momentary smile and light in her eyes. I think you can all see that.
I am so honored because I know some of the story, but now I'm so glad you get to share your experience. For again, the fall season, what you experienced in your life as you transitioned into the second half of life, the fall phase, and how that transformative crossing changed your relationship to self and prepared you for who you are, well, you're becoming, and who you are today as you move into elderhood.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question, Chamatkara and Ken. And I've given it a great deal of contemplation. I do want to say, Xavier, I love how you talked about it as a time of harvesting. But as you were saying that, I was thinking, yeah, but in order to harvest a good crop, right, there's a lot of weeds you got to pull. And for me, the fall, at least the first part of the fall season, was pulling a lot of weeds out. The summer, Diane, I loved how you described how your summer was so much about letting go of the old ways and the old roles and values that your family had foisted on you. And then you didn't speak quite so much about it, but your biography certainly does, of all the new roles you took on and developed. And I think that's part of what happens in the summer. We take on new roles, or feel more comfortable and consonant with who we are. And yet, for me, the biggest role I took on in my summer period was motherhood, was having my children. And so the fall period in my life, I mark it as when I became a grandmother. And that the significance in those transitions were that becoming a grandmother also meant a certain liberation from all the roles and bonds and obligations of motherhood and parenting, because that's a time when, if one does it well, and I can't say that I did it all that well, one really begins to entrust one's own children to be responsible adults and welcomes them into the summers of their lives. And so I found fall to be very much a time of personal liberation, but at great expense. Ken talks in his book about fall becoming a time in which our relationship becomes more vertical and less horizontal, meaning the horizontal relationships and all those roles that we develop in our summer time, developing our careers. I spent many years in graduate school and then as a psychologist. I realized as I was coming into the fall season that many of those roles, including being a wife, no longer fit, because my primary relationship was quickly becoming that vertical relationship, that relationship with the divine. For me, a relationship with the Divine Mother. And it was exactly at the time I was becoming a grandmother that I entered into a totally new course of yogic studies. I had practiced yoga all my life, practiced meditation all my life, but suddenly I had the freedom to make that the absolute main focus of my life. I had also been in an unhappy marriage, probably from the very beginning. But I had made a vow when I became a mother that I would stay with my husband at least until my children were grown in order for them to have that stability. And I struggled to hold on to some of those old roles, some of those old identities. I tried to hold on to the marriage. And yet it became so clear that my primary relationship is with the divine, and that there was no space in my life anyway for another relationship, including one that I had lived in for over 30 years. And at the same time, I had thought I had a lifetime career as a therapist. I thought I would be doing it forever. I loved it. I loved my clients. I felt like I was helpful. And yet, again, as these experiences started coming and the wisening started increasing, it was like I could no longer fit into that role of simply being present and talking with people. Rather, it was more about being present and inviting people into a new energetic state of awareness that was beyond body, that was beyond mind. And this then developed through a series of mystical experiences into Kali Ki Reiki and eventually into the Wisdom School. And so it was a period of having to let go of so many roles which I valued and which society valued, and in which I was valued as a member of society, and stepping into a more esoteric, misunderstood way of being in the world. And so, like I said, the harvest came, but not without difficulty, not without having to really nurture these new seeds that really were not new seeds, right, Ken? These are the seeds that had been planted long ago, before even this body came into being. But those seeds had to be nurtured and allowed to sprout. And then there was the discernment between which seeds were sprouting. Were they the old seeds of the old conditioned roles, or were they the new seeds? And you say something else in your book, Ken. It was just one sentence that I'm going to read that very simple, but for me, very profound. What I did not understand at the time was that it was not my old conditioning that I was attempting to release, but rather my identification with it, because we become so identified with our roles. My role as a mother, my role as a psychologist, my role as a wife. And that's how, in many ways, I defined myself, and that's how others defined me. And so to suddenly step into this world of saying, but I'm not that. I'm more than that. I can't tell you exactly what that is that I am, but I can invite you into that space if you're willing to try, if you're willing to trust. And so many wonderful experiences came out of that. And yet to let go of those old roles was not a simple and easy process. So that's the story.
You know, I just want to say, Rajashree, I was very honored to know you during this time and to participate in a part of you that was dying and that you were letting go of. And you were at that time letting go of your license as a psychologist. And I remember having that conversation with you.
Yeah.
And that is a big letting go, to be able to let go of that.
Oh, and it's a big weight off my back too, Ken.
And I remember, your emergence on these levels, and have participated in observing, your great unfolding, and you're connecting with the deepest ground of your being in terms of the love force, and that is your primary alignment. And you have gone deeper in that alignment as I've known you, and it's been such a privilege to observe this shift and this greatness, this largeness that has been continuing to emerge in your life.
No, thank you. And it is so good to
Mm-hmm.
recall how you were there for me during this time. And you were there for my husband, who very much needed to be seen and understood in a way that I could no longer give him. Yeah. We grow with love, and we grow more deeply into love. But even with that love, we cannot help but to hurt some people along the way, because there are other people who are also attached to our identifications. And that can grow with us.
And one of the beauties of our relationship that very few people know about is that we midwife each other.
Yes, we do.
That I have been there to be a midwife for her, and she has been there to midwife me through this time.
Yes.
And through this rite of passage, so to speak, and opening to my own destiny at this time. And this book really is a reflection of that. And so thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for bringing this powerful creation into the world. And I will just say how I admire you, Ken, for being able to go through a huge transition, a huge difficult passage in life, and so far to keep all your primary relationships intact. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Thank you very much. Well, my primary relationships are a great source of nourishment for me and commitment, and so they continue to teach me and to inform me and guide me, and so I'm very, very, as I throw out a blessing to my wife Robin and to my son Elijah. that they are a huge source of support for me.
And for me, I just bless and thank Divine Mother, who is always present for me and really, I feel, lives within me. And yet again, it's not the ordinary path.
Now, this is the courageous path. And it's also a path of calling and responding to the calling with great fidelity.
Especially as you're getting to the winter season also. Listening to that calling as all of that wisening is coming to fruition. And then as we get to winter, as you were saying, Ken, it's the time of then turning around and giving back. Once that wisening reaches a point where you are in that vertical relationship with that soul self and really operating from that place predominantly in your interactions, that call, it might be different wording, but the mentoring and eldering is what happens in the winter stage in the book, Ken, right?
Well, I would say the mentoring and eldering happens all through the lifespan. But what happens is there is an inner impetus to give back, to be there for others. And we actually start to coalesce wisdom that is useful to them if we continue along our path of individuation. So I really want to call in winter at this point because I think it's such a profound culmination of our path.
Xavier, would you do us the honors?
Ashe, absolutely. So after we have weeded and dropped leaves that are no longer needed and begun to harvest and move into the winter, there's a South African song that comes to mind to me, which is called Senzenina. Senzenina means, what have we done? But it also is, as I think of eldering and coming to that place of wisdom and being a mentor, it's what have we done? It's retrospective on life, but it's also what am I doing? Where am I? Who am I? But also looking to the future, where am I going? So as we look at winter and give this sonic blessing, perhaps we can stand at that point where we open to past, present, future in this moment, according to what our soul means for each one of us. Senzenina, 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 Senzenina. Senzenina, 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 Senzeni, Senzenina, 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 Senzenina. Senzenina, 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 Senzenina.
Thank you so much, Xavier. As that sacred sound settles into our every cell and fiber of our being, I'd like to warmly welcome Dr. Robert Atkinson for the winter season. Certainly a mentor for me, with great support and love. Dr. Atkinson is the founder of One Planet Peace Forum and Professor Emeritus at the University of Southern Maine. He is the author of the newly published The Way of Unity, Essential Principles and Preconditions for Peace, the 2022 Nautilus Book Award winner, A New Story of Wholeness, an experiential guide for connecting the human family, the 2017 Nautilus Book Award winner, The Story of Our Time, From Duality to Interconnectedness to Oneness, Mystic Journey, Getting to the Heart of Your Soul Story, Year of Living Deeply, a memoir of 1969. He is also a co-editor of Our Moment of Choice, Evolutionary Visions and Hope for the Future, and author of 5 other books. His PhD is in cross-cultural human development from the University of Pennsylvania, with a postdoctoral fellowship in adolescent development from the University of Chicago. He is a director of storycommons.org, a member of the Evolutionary Leaders, and as I mentioned, managing editor of Light on Light Press. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Sandra. Thank you very much for your
Thank you for coming
warm
today.
introduction. Great to be here.
Well, in this winter season, what have you noticed about your relationship to self as you enter this phase? And when or how did you become aware of your position as elder? And how do you think this time is different from other periods of life?
Another big question. And thank you, Xavier, for Senzenina and your beautiful drumming. And Ken, it's a pleasure to be part of the launch of this important book that helps us see how our lives really do fit into a larger whole. So I see a dual role in the winter phase of life, as it's both the central part of a cyclical process of ongoing transformations throughout our life and the destination of this life. So I'll say a little bit about both. In the first role, we see in the annual cycle of the seasons that winter represents a retreat, a slowing down, a turning inward, and preparing for a renewal that will follow. Winter, in this sense, is the pivotal archetype in all versions of the process of transformation. In mythology, it is referred to as initiation. In mysticism, as purification. In ritual, as transition. And in psychology, what Jung calls the individuation process. So winter is what I see as the muddle phase of the transformational process. This archetype really is designed to facilitate bringing the process of transformation to its completion or resolution. Other archetypal expressions of this winter phase leading to renewal are well known in sacred traditions, like the Night Sea Journey, Joseph in the Well, and Jonah in the belly of the whale. Similar motifs are found in many traditions that depict being swallowed into the unknown, which is how we go inward to be born again. My own experience of this archetype came first in my mid-20s when I was literally given the keys to a Franciscan monastery by its guardian father when I was in between places to live. Wanting to support the project I was working on at the time, He, the guardian father of the monastery, offered me a cell of my own in the old friary with access to the abbey, the chapel, the shrines, the library, and the dining room. In my retreat and turning inward, I was free to explore the mystery traditions of a whole new community. And I had numerous heart-opening experiences, came to learn more about myself, and was afforded many gifts of grace. So on this archetypal level, winter in our lives can be repeated many times to bring about renewal whenever it's needed. It's a period characterized by formidable challenges, overcoming them, getting glimpses of a new reality, and ultimately reclaiming our innate wholeness. The second kind of winter in our lives is one that comes as we move toward the end of our life. Depending on what we believe about this time, it may not be an end, but a time of preparation for another beginning. For me, a couple ways this winter period of life is different from other periods of life include having a much stronger sense of something I first became aware of in my mid-20s, and that is, as has been mentioned many times already, the desire to give back in some way to others and to the world. As I've grown older, this sense has heightened and intensified. I've become much more aware of this need to serve others in whatever way I can. I've realized how this responsibility intricately connects personal transformation to collective transformation. Both are aspects of the same process, one leading to the other. Personal transformation carries with it the collective function of acting in the world in a way that leads to the betterment of the world, what Kabbalists call tikkun olam, the work of repairing the world or restoring the world to wholeness. For me, this has been through my writing, workshops, and an increased openness to mentor others, as I had experienced in my early adulthood. The other way this winter phase is different from other periods of life for me is that I've consciously made a shift to try to live in my essential identity as a soul in preparation for an everlasting life. What is helping me in this is imagining the end of this winter phase as a bird being released from its cage. In this metaphor, the soul continues to progress in an eternal journey. The final transition, death, can then be seen as a messenger of joy. And this is where your book, Remembering Self, really comes in as a resource and tool for everyone. I'll just say that for me, the things that really matter are fewer. The focus on an inner and outer spiritual life is much stronger. Detachment from all things material is more pronounced. Most desired are all things of the spirit. And foremost to be embodied are the virtues of a life lived deeply.
Thank you, Bob. I just want to say that I had at least two questions for you, but you've answered all of them. And I also want to say that what I found myself doing is dropping into a place of receptivity as you were speaking as elder, because you are articulating experiences that only an individual who has reached this place can articulate. And so I just want to thank you for the teaching, and I want to thank you for holding your ground as elder and as wisdom keeper,
Thank you, Ken. It's
and
great to be
bringing
part
that
of this.
bringing that to all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so, as we have made it around the seasons, spring and summer and fall and winter of this beautiful book, We are now that we made it all the way back around, we are going into the center of the self, the center of the soul, the lotus. And Xavier, would you do us the honor of bringing us back to self, back to soul?
Absolutely. There's a song that I was privileged to learn from a great Dagara elder and shaman that many of you may know. It's a man that I and can respect greatly, Malidoma Somé. The song is called Azima, and as Malidoma expressed it, it is a song of peace and a call for peace, for the spirit of peace to wash over the earth and all of its people. And so as we drop into the center of the self, I get this great image of peace at the center, within a matrix of harmony, and within a nameless something of wholeness. So perhaps we can focus on the wholeness that we desire for ourselves, for our loved ones, for the planet. Azima wo ye, Azima wo, Azima wo. Azima o, Azima o. Azima o. Azima wo, Azima wo, Azima wo, Azima wo.
Thank you so much, Xavier. With that celebratory joy of coming back to self, balance, wholeness, I'd like to warmly welcome our last guest, Peter Smith. Peter has been a consciousness explorer for almost 30 years. He served for over 2 decades with one of Australia's leading banks before starting his own change management consultancy, focusing on values-driven organizational transformations across Australia, Asia, and the UK. Peter undertook postgraduate studies at the Australian Graduate School of Management at the University of NSW, and he left a promising career as a banking executive to chase his dreams and follow the call of his soul. He started originally by exploring some of his own past lives before being trained as a hypnotherapist and taking clients on journeys, transcending time and space. Over time, he founded 2 hypnotherapy schools, the modality of hypnoenergetics, and became president of the Michael Newton Institute for Life Between Lives from 2009 to 2019. He now serves on the MNI Advisory Council, leading the LBL and Beyond program, evolving the organization to make an even greater contribution to the consciousness of humanity. Peter was awarded the Peggy Newton Award for Outstanding Service to MNI in 2013 by Michael himself, and has trained LBL practitioners and teachers in different parts of the world since 2006. Pete founded the Institute for Quantum Consciousness in 2013 to blend spirituality with key principles of quantum physics. He has built a network of facilitators all around the world who take clients on journeys to show them their magnificence, transcend old therapeutic systems, and visit other realities and dimensions. His books embrace many of the ideas and concepts that he has researched, taught, and offered to his clients over his metaphysical career. Previously published works include Hypnoenergetics, The 4 Dimensions, and Quantum Consciousness, Journey Through Other Realms. The Transcendence of Celeste Kelly is his first novel. Hi, Pete.
Hi, Sandra. Great to be here.
Great to have you here. As we are in the center of wholeness and the center of the soul and back to our original state, can you speak to the completion of the journey through the human labyrinth and the soul's existence beyond the matrix of human life?
Well, for me, this is the ultimate remembering, Sandra. And this is what I feel Ken's book builds so beautifully towards. And it's when we shed this human shell and realize the illusion that it's always been. You know, for me, it's about understanding that this chapter of our life that, of course, has 4 segments, each chapter, as we move through the lineage of our soul. For me, it's about remembering that we are the book while we're still in the chapter. And I feel that's what Ken's book is doing. It's helping us to remember that as we move through these seasons, and then we move towards that ultimate transition, if you like, towards the full remembered self. That's when we're truly set free from all of the conditioning that has perhaps permeated our lives for so long. So when we know that we're the book and not just the chapter, we're able to shed the disguise and become our true selves. What I love about where we're at, and this is, Ken with this incredible mix of science and spirituality, which is what I've always loved about him since our first conversation many years ago. There's something in this that helps us to understand that science and spirituality have always had an overlap. But for me, they're now merging. And the path to do that for me has been quantum physics. Finally, we have science talking about alternate realities, other dimensions, these other places where subatomic particles disappear to and perhaps return. I mean, this is an awakening that allows us to see ourselves in our true form. I think it was Greg Braden who said we are this same collection of subatomic particles powered by consciousness itself. And that consciousness is something that is so amazingly expansive. But somehow we managed to bring that consciousness down into one of these chapters for a while, to learn, to grow, to serve others. What I love about this aspect and why I'm passionate about Ken's book is that the 3 roles that he plays through the text, and not just the 4 seasons, but the 3 roles within the 4 seasons. It's something that has this incredible holistic and integrated view that shows us who we really are. So thank you for a great question yet again.
Yeah. As you were talking, I kind of transformed, like we viewed the earth as flat, then it was round, and we got a solar system, and now we have dimensions and time and space.
Well, thank you, Pete. And what comes to mind for me as you're talking is how we're feeling the ground underneath us to enlarge the lens. And the lens has been small. And I think that many times people in scientific fields of psychology, medicine, they feel very bound to the small lens for fear that as they open it up, that they won't be taken seriously. And I think that what we're trying to do is we're trying to enlarge the lens, but also integrate so much of what science and physics and psychology and what we think of as spirituality or metaphysics, what it brings into it. And I think what we're seeing is we're seeing the change or the reintegration of a split between what we think of as metaphysics and metapsychology or psychology. And we're starting to understand that it never really has been split. The split has been our own misunderstanding or our own unwillingness to really engage that larger lens. And so I see my work and I see your work and I see everybody that's participating in this as providing a permission structure to the world to say we can enlarge this lens and we can pull all of our multiple disciplines together that are approaching many different aspects of this into a unified way of understanding the human being and the human journey and why we're here and what we're doing here in this journey. And so I see your work, Pete, as being able to take us that much further and providing the groundwork, the structuring underneath so that this lens can stay open.
Absolutely, Ken. And I think we're all paths up the same mountain, aren't we? And it's that self-actualization and transcendence at the top that we're all seeking. And for me, it's inevitable that we let go and we become this greatness that goes beyond the human disguise. And what I love about the whole conversation that we've had today, and particularly your book, is that we're getting ready for people to undertake that ultimate transcendence, that remembering of our true self, that we are, this is not it. And this shift of consciousness for the whole of humanity that we're all part of. The way to accelerate it is to help people know that they are more than they believe themselves to be. It's the relinquishing of that conditioning, whether it's familial, societal, cultural. It's the surrendering of all those levels of condition that allow us to see the true self. I love the stories from the speakers today because everybody has spoken about the relinquishment of that conditioning that sets us free. I think that's what this book does. It's a catalyst for the remembering of who we really are.
And my hope is it's some kind of it's shedding light on the universal structure that we're meant to walk through as a part of our awakening.
Yeah.
And that there is an intelligence to this structure, and that we're not victims of the strictures and the confinement that we sometimes feel as we're walking through. And I love what Diana said when she was beginning to talk about honoring so many of the difficult parts of her life that were actually there to help awaken her and set her free. And that's something that's very difficult to understand as we're walking the path, especially early on in the path. And it's why it's so important for elders to remind us that there's purpose to this path and how we walk it.
And I think it's the experiencing of some of that human distress that becomes our greatest teachers, Ken, and Diana's story is a great example of that. There's something in this that if we want to learn about the universe, we have to explore it in its fullness. And I feel that this place is one small corner of the universe where the energies are strong and the emotions are powerful. To come here to experience that takes enormous courage at the level of our soul to even take human form in this place. So everybody on this planet, we've got 8 billion heroes to start with. But what helps those people become the greatest heroes they can and have that ripple out to other places across a multiversal possibility is to transcend through those things, to look back with the wisdom that we accumulate through life back to some of those challenges and see them that they were simply the lessons that we chose. If you want to desensitize trauma, that's the best way to do it, I feel.
We sometimes don't realize the intention behind the great challenges we offer ourselves. And that we as souls are large enough and wise enough to understand how important these challenges are, that are very difficult to see when we're in the human condition.
Absolutely.
And so we need to have both perspectives as the alchemy of this process.
I think the power that we generate at the level of our soul from moving from an unremembered state to a remembered state is what keeps the universe alive. It's, you come from here to here, and it's something that is profound. If we arrived in the remembered state already, then the journey would be meaningless.
Mm-hmm. And it's one of the true joys, too, coming to the place where you feel you're in this time and space. But as Diana was saying, she got to a point where you can look back and then also operate outside of that time and that space, sending that healing and love. I know that's across traditions. Rajashree Maa does that in her and Kaliki Reiki too, sending love in her drop method back and forth to heal generational trauma and traumas of the past, release karma. So when you realize you're not operating just in this time and space, but can operate on a grander scale from your soul self, that's, I know, Pete, you're talking about ultimate freedom in our prior conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it's about free will. And I believe that the energy of the universe embraces free will at every level. And it's if we choose to take a journey such as what's described in Ken's book, we break the pattern of the traumas that some people continue their entire lives and then struggle with at the moment of their transition, of the regrets and the things that haven't gone well. But if we process along the way, if we find those lessons and those learnings in the history of this particular chapter and add that to the glory of our ultimate book of the eternal journey of our soul, then that's a life well lived.
And then we are able to embody that rhythm that Xavier was playing when we come into wholeness. We can have that joyful celebration Bob was talking about in the winter period of preparing for that transition to the next energetic life. We can fully celebrate instead of maybe having still some residual fear or attachment or other things that haven't been worked out yet.
Yeah, we've
I wanna
seen big
add-
parties. Yeah, go on, Ken.
That's okay. I want to add to this that part of the challenge of these stages of life is not just, it's one thing to remember who we are. It's another thing to remember. And that is to gather ourselves up, to gather all the pieces, all the pieces that don't want to be gathered and all the pieces that do want to be gathered, and to bring them in and to have the courage and the development of a ground of love within us that can embrace all of the discarded, abandoned, rejected parts of ourselves. And that is a magnificent task of reintegration as we mature. And so I just want to put a little, message out of just what a deep challenge that is, and why the human process, and as we walk through these seasons, why it is such a deep challenge, and why we need help, and why we need guidance, and why we need elders and mentors and therapists and all of those souls who offer themselves to provide space and a container for those who are entering into the deep heat of these challenges and need the kind of holding that's necessary to be able to gather all of these parts up.
And I feel we have soul contracts that cover that ground well. At times can as well, with the people that cross our paths. But for me, what keeps me going is that the essence of our soul, a little saying I've got, that every moment of every day, your soul knows exactly what it's doing, even if we don't in human form. And I feel that soul is present through every season, through every chapter, through the entire book. And I find that a great resource.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you. Well, and that, I believe, will transition us to conclusion. Ken, do you want to have any wrap-up comments before I close us out for the day?
I just want to say how grateful I am to all of you for coming and for bringing your authentic selves here so that we can demonstrate to others what this looks like, and that we can have these kinds of conversations that are both about life and about human existence, but also about what it means to move to higher levels of being. And I just want to embrace you all and tell you how much I love you and how much I respect you all and how grateful I am for you to come and support this launch.
Well, Ken and I and everyone at Light on Light Press and Sacred Stories, we thank you for sharing in this experience today and sharing in this book launch, and for holding that sacred space and community to experience a little bit of rediscovery and awakening as we traverse the seasons of our souls back to that unifying beingness of who we truly are. And for everyone watching, in whatever season of remembering you find yourself, may this book help light your way toward a fuller awareness and expression of yourself. And when the time comes, may you have the love and courage to offer your journey as an elder to those who may seek wisdom and guidance on their path. Remembering Self, Seasons of the Soul, rediscovered through mystical experience and depth psychology, is now available at all booksellers, including Amazon and Barnes & Noble. To learn more about Dr. Ken Lakritz or to schedule podcasts or interviews, you can reach him through his website, www.drkennethlakritzphd.com or kenlakritz@gmail.com. Again, thank you everyone for attending, and many blessings.